Hello and welcome to the eTech podcast with me, your host, Ryan Maughan. I have been involved in the development of electrified vehicles and machines since 2005 as an engineer and a business leader. This podcast is the product of my passion for electric and autonomous vehicle technology. I'm here to share knowledge from some of the world's leading experts, as well as my own insights. Join me as we accelerate the transition to cleaner, safer and smarter vehicles and grow the industry around the world. And for today's episode, I'm joined by Selin Tur, who is the Managing Director of Williams Grand Prix Technologies. We're going to talk about her background and how she got into doing what she's doing now. An absolutely fascinating story. So thank you, Selin, for agreeing to join me today.
Thank you very much for inviting, Ryan. It's an absolute pleasure.
So maybe if we could start with a bit of your background and just sort of understanding how you got into engineering and what you're doing.
Yeah, probably my background in engineering started throughout my childhood years. By origin, I'm Turkish, from quite a modest middle-class family in Turkey. I grew up quite an introverted, shy kid, and I somehow found playing with machines or toys like Legos much more suitable to my nature. So I quite enjoyed working on computers from the very early age. So it started through those years, and my progression into engineering was quite natural. In Turkey, I even started going to a technical high school in electrical electronics. I kept enjoying that. Somehow I managed getting into university at Istanbul Technical University and studied electrical engineering there. But in parallel, there's one more thing. I fell in love with Formula One racing cars at very, very early age.
Okay.
And then everything around them, their beauty, the lines, how they were designed, their colors, people, their passion on it, racing elements. So from very, very early ages, I became a huge Formula One fan. And those things kept progressing. I became an engineer. I was quite interested in cars. Was lucky enough to start working at a governmental research center in Turkey as my first job after I graduated. And I was working on my first electric vehicle over 25 years ago, Ryan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Because obviously the Formula One industry is mostly in the UK, but a lot of people listening might not realize Turkey's actually got an amazing automotive sector. It's really, really strong in that space, from kind of domestic production of vehicles for some big global companies, but also there's a few kind of local players as well in Turkey, making those famous minibuses and sort of those things, but bus manufacturer as well in the sort of Turkish domestic market. Ford have got a big plant in Turkey as well, haven't they? And
they do, yes.
And lots of others. So it's
Stellantis has run,
it's a big sector in the.
Yeah.
I always used to have a joke because I think Turkish people tend to be quite practical. You know, you all learn to do like welding in kindergarten and stuff like that.
Maybe, I don't know. I've been out of Turkey now for 20 years, so things moved on. But like you said, even Fiat, Stellantis had JV, joint ventures. Renault had a facility during those years. And my first electric vehicle was converting a Fiat Doblo into serial hybrid, actually. That was my first ever job.
Okay.
It was many, many years ago now. Yeah, but I followed my dreams, Ryan, effectively. I was very much motivated on somehow finding my way into Formula One or racing. And I think I started hearing about these regulation changes in Formula One, bringing kinetic energy recovery system into racing series. I think 2005 kind of years. And I started looking around if I can get into the UK somehow, because UK is the center of Formula One racing. Let's put it that way. Yeah, there are a few teams outside, but majority is run in the UK. So I came to the UK. I was lucky enough to be an AVL engineer, but working directly at Jaguar Land Rover site. I believe I was one of the first 20 engineers or so who started electrification in Jaguar Land Rover. I was really lucky enough to be working on their early hybrid vehicles. And then I've been headhunted by Mercedes I moved to Mercedes High Performance Engines, one of the Formula One engine suppliers.
Okay, yeah.
And I became one of that group of engineers who won a Formula One Grand Prix with a hybrid engine first time in the history. So kind of dreams coming true for me.
Yeah.
It was 2009, Hungary. Lewis Hamilton just clicked the button on his steering wheel, overtook Mark Webber, went ahead and won the race. And that was a moment for me in my life.
Oh wow. And that's so that kind of combination of electrical and your EV experience and kind of working on hybrid systems, is that, that kind of got you in at the right place, right time to then have the right skills to go into F1?
Yeah, I don't know how to put this in the right terms, but I was lucky enough to be at the beginning of a technological revolution, electrification. Probably it was not even today's norms. Very early stage, I was becoming a specialist on electric vehicles and their powertrains and batteries. And thinking about it now, at an early age, I believe I was one of the most experienced engineers on Earth on this in this space, and it enabled me to take place in Formula One. Of course, I was really experienced. I was very much excited. I the, I tried keeping myself at the forefront of technology as well.
Yeah.
I've been quite hands-on as well as an engineer. So
Yeah.
and those things make me suitable for a racing team. I believe I joined Mercedes those years. But if you remember, I don't know how much you followed those years, but a hybrid engine was even very expensive at the level of Formula One during those years. Actually, after the 2009 season, they decided to cancel kinetic energy recovery systems.
Yeah.
And I thought they will never come back until 2013, 14 years. And I didn't want to work on engine control systems. I was quite a specialized engineer already.
Yeah.
So I returned back to automotive. And a few years later, still working on Jaguar vehicles. A few years later, finally joined Williams, actually Williams's electronics department, to work on this beautiful Jaguar CX-75 hybrid supercar program running between Williams Formula One racing team and Jaguar Land Rover. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah. And I was working on the design development of the battery pack, especially the electronics and development of the battery pack, testing of it, integration of it into the car. And that program really progressed well. If you have never watched before James Bond Spectre movie, there's this beautiful orange Williams cars chasing James Bond in Rome.
Yeah.
So I was the what was my title? Principal hybrid systems engineer or something like that. So I was my job was developing the battery pack for that car. Yeah.
And actually, if I remember, that CX-75 was quite. I mean, it's one of those projects where you just sort of wish that it had gone further. But at the time, it was really groundbreaking because they initially had planned to use a turbine engine, a micro turbine.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so like really power dense, and then with a battery pack, and then an electric propulsion system. So it was an absolutely, quite a radical design for a propulsion system for a car, particularly at that time. Yep. I think you wouldn't find that sort of propulsion system in any other vehicle. But typical sort of Jaguar, it had all the beauty and all the potential, but then never quite. I guess they themselves had lots of issues as a business around that time. So is that the end of the Ford era with Jaguar?
I believe it was already past that era, if I remember correctly. The market had quite a big competition coming from number of sports car manufacturers. But we built really quite high quality 5 prototypes, and these cars were more engine and hybrid systems rather than turbines. So it was more production focused supercars. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
and every business makes decisions, strategic decisions. And during that period, they didn't want to compete in that field, I believe, and consider the largest strategic objectives of the business. They decided not to carry on with that program.
Yeah.
But we learned so much during that time that enabled us at Williams, the small group of engineers, effectively turning into a business, starting the former consultancy arm of Williams called as Williams Advanced Engineering.
Right. So that project was sort of the genesis of that business spinning it out as a consulting group.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm writing the history from my own eyes, but as far as I have seen, that happened like that. So I remember the day at least the program came to an end. We had about 50, 60 people specifically focused on that program. And we developed quite a lot of capabilities and technologies. It came out with a state-of-the-art hybrid powertrain, state-of-the-art battery pack. We had our own ECUs, we had our own control systems, and I don't know, chassis and styling capabilities. So it created a significant foundation for us. And yeah, but there has been a moment during that period, such as my first project after Jaguar CX-75 was working with Brompton bicycles. And I was lucky enough to be given a chance to develop the first concept of Brompton electric propulsion system. So if you see any electric Brompton bicycles out there, it was me and my team who came up with the first prototype of those systems. Yeah, it was quite interesting actually for all of us.
That's a good sort of reference project from motorsport back into sort of the normal world, especially for someone who lives in London.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Are you a Brompton bike fan?
I am, definitely. I owned one of them.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, and I think we'll probably get around to this. So effectively, you've kind of come almost full circle because you're back at Williams, and now Williams Grand Prix Technologies. So that's kind of like a new business taking motorsport technology and applying it out. But in the past, Williams had a business called WAE, or Williams Advanced Engineering, which then became WAE, which was then acquired by Fortescue. And that business is involved in engineering huge mining trucks and hybrid systems for, electric and hybrid systems for all sorts of different vehicles. And they actually run some racing cars within the WAE business as well.
Yeah, I must admit, under our legendary leader Craig Wilson, as you know him as well. So that group of people managed building a very strong engineering consultancy business, and I believe we became one of the most prominent businesses, especially in electrification area. Most of the electrification programs we had to handle. I don't know, first Aston Martin electric prototypes. With my team, we won the first generation Formula E battery contract, and that was my next big program, designing, developing the battery pack powering entire Formula E grid over 4 seasons. We did lots of car programs, started Jaguar Formula E racing team. That was my last 3 years fully dedicated into Jaguar's electric Formula E racing team. Effectively, we designed and developed the entire powertrain in-house at Williams for the car. And then I, as you remember, in 2018, after about 7 years at Williams, I left Williams and moved into an industrial sector. Probably, I say this, I'm one of the few people who stopped racing on the grid, on the circuit, and next week started working on commercial vehicles. I joined CNH Industrial, which was during those years manufacturing on-highway and off-highway industrial vehicles, and I was with the Powertrain Group. I set up another electrified powertrain division from scratch, this time across multiple countries for industrial vehicles. During that time, I think Williams Group first sold a portion of WAE to a private equity business, and then later on entirety as one of the best electrification businesses out there were snapped out by bought out by Fortescue. Yeah,
Yeah.
they were lucky to get a great group of engineers. Yeah,
I guess for their own big electrifying big mining equipment and that sort of machinery. So actually, it's the next step there that you mentioned. So a lot of people might not realize it, but effectively, a few years ago, CNH Industrial was sort of formed as a business. So some people might recognize the CNH name from tractors and agricultural equipment, but basically the Fiat group formed CNH Industrial, which included Iveco trucks and all of then the Case and the New Holland and the sort of the other brands that they had in the off-highway sector. So it's a business that a lot of people aren't necessarily familiar with what it does, but it's absolutely huge company in the commercial vehicle sector, one of the biggest truck, bus, and off-highway equipment manufacturers in the world.
Yes, CNH Industrial is the third largest holding of Exor Group after Stellantis and Ferrari. Effectively, for Exor Group, CNH Industrial was the commercial vehicle arm of the business. When I joined, underneath CNH, there were 5 different brands. We were over 40,000 people with an annual revenue over $24 billion. So it's quite a large-scale business operating across the world. Second largest agricultural machinery producer, manufacturer in the world. Just my engineering group. I started setting that up between Switzerland and Italy. In Switzerland, nearby to Zurich, in Arbonne by Lake Bodensee, and in Italy, in Torino. As you know, while I was trying to set up that group, I was both hiring people and trying to buy companies out.
Yeah.
There's a story there in itself, but in the end, we acquired a business in Coventry area, specialized in battery management systems. So it was quite exciting time period in my career, actually.
Yeah. I think I'm allowed to say the Potenza business from our friend Paul.
Definitely.
Very good guy. A really cracking business as well. So yeah,
amazing.
It was a huge entity, and actually within sort of globally, because Iveco was quite early with electric propulsion and hybrid propulsion systems in some of their products. So they were always pushing that. And an alternative, they're quite a strong company for alternative fuels as well, things like CNG and stuff, because of local regulations in Italy and other places where they were selling vehicles. So
yeah, definitely Iveco with the daily light commercial vehicle has been one of the earliest companies coming to market with EV products through FPT, the organization Fiat Powertrain Technologies, origination of it, but FPT Industrial, the group that I was in, started developing natural gas engines for commercial vehicles. During my years, they invested quite a lot in hydrogen technologies as well, but as I was developing the battery and electric propulsion systems over there. But Iveco was the on-highway business, FPT was the powertrain, and on top of it, you got Case IH in predominantly US and New Holland predominantly in Europe, agricultural and construction machinery businesses. So New Holland, under New Holland branding, especially in Europe, the group did quite a lot of decarbonization, achieved quite a lot of progress in decarbonization, utilizing biofuels, probably not zero emission, but net zero emission fuels. Still, we did build prototypes on using electric propulsion systems, hybrid systems, and so on. Quite a large business, great engineering capabilities, great products overall. And that was a different, after my first 3 years at FPT Industrial, setting up this electrification group, I've been given an opportunity by the group CTO to become a vice president of advanced technologies. So following 3 years between 21 to 24, over the 3 years time period, I was looking after a wide variety of technologies, from automation, autonomous systems, integration of machine learning control algorithms into automation of industrial vehicles,
Yep.
as well as wider decarbonization technologies. It was quite interesting for me, really. So I was managing quite a large group from South to North America to India. Quite exciting years for me.
Yeah. But must have been very different though, sort of come from the motorsport background where everything has to happen like yesterday. And how did you find that transition from motor racing into more sort of conventional vehicles?
It was quite challenging for me, especially early days, because coming out of just racing circuit, we would have made decision and executed that, delivered that, but when you're working in an OEM environment, first decision-making process follows a kind of long and intensive process first, and then you start progressing. You're working with suppliers. You need to negotiate with suppliers. And then in motorsports, we cannot shift times, right? Race starts. Whether you're ready or not. Whereas in commercial businesses, you can change the deadlines.
Yeah.
So hence, you have a different kind of mindset in motorsport. There's an urgency. There's an element of I can do attitude and getting on with it, and trying to fit into those limits. I think there's a term of frugal innovation. So you got time limited, you got your resource limited, and you need to be on time over there no matter what. So you are naturally being driven for being innovative and agile in motorsports environment. I think that was the biggest difference for me. And what was quite challenging, I must admit, I was coming through the distributed decision-making process, individuals enabled to make calls in their fields. Yet in a large organization, and that decision-making process requires multiple layers of approval process, and I found those things quite challenging for me, I must admit.
Yeah, it's a big difference. I've one of the things that I found particularly, like actually in motor racing, and particularly as you have, you've been in the absolute forefront of it. So I'm sure you won't mind me saying, but you've done some amazing things and really been at the forefront with some of these groups. But when you're at that team or in that organization that's challenging to win a race, everyone kind of knows why they're there. So you don't have to tell everyone why they're there. It's like that's why they're there, and it sounds really simple, but just that whole sort of organizational construct around, in a big company like particularly with all the change that CNH Industrial went through, being spun out of the Fiat Group and all the rest of it. Like there's a lot of churn of like people trying to understand what their purpose is, and that kind of thing. Whereas in motorsport, it's quite brutal, but also very clear. There's no misunderstanding why we're here.
Thank you very much for highlighting that, Ryan. I didn't want to go into that detail, but there has been times that I had to justify my existence. So that was challenging, and I think in high performance organizations, ultimately you got the talent, organizational structure, roles, responsibilities are defined, decision making processes are defined, delegated, and you execute. You plan, but you execute, and you cannot anyway afford duplicated roles and responsibilities, which creates confusions and unnecessary delays or inefficiencies. So in motorsports racing environment, we cannot afford doing that. But when the organization scales up, naturally there would be duplications. And I won't name the company, not someone I work for, but with one of my friends, we were talking, working for this large company. He mentioned that at some point we counted how many battery groups we had in the business, and we counted 6 different. This was quite a large multinational business operating in industrial products. And when you're scaling up, you naturally start maybe in a kind of uncontrolled way start duplicating roles, responsibilities, your resources, and then if you cannot really put the structure to pull them into an order, unfortunately, it causes a lot of disruption in the business.
Yeah, it's kind of like an inefficiency of scale. You go as you go through that cycle, and some companies come out on the other side and get through it and kind of streamline and get over the growing pains. But some companies don't so much and end up carrying that inefficiency to even bigger scale.
Yeah, but on the other hand, of course, there are lots of positives as well in terms of the learning curve that you go through operating in a kind of large scale matrix organization enables you to have better communication skills, I must admit. So, and also you start working with much more diverse group of individuals. So you try learning about getting the best out of diversity in many ways, and your resources are so wide. You start collaborating with leading universities, research centers. So because scale is so different, that then your interaction with multiple collaborations across the world, across sectors, starts becoming really interesting as well. So no, in life I see things as pros and cons, right? So
Yeah.
and you prefer one way than the other way. Yeah, I don't think there's a right or wrong, but probably the way that you decide and move on
Yeah.
in life. So yeah.
And given so Selin, you're now back at Williams, I can kind of taking a guess that the motorsport way of life is not done for you yet. You're back into that. So what's happening at Williams, and why did you rejoin that business?
Williams changed a lot over the years. Of course, Williams family sold the business out to Doralton Group, and the group is moving at full speed to go back to its championship winning years, and we are executing an ambitious program under James Ross's leadership. And Doralton Group wanted to have a technology arm to utilize. First, as every sensible business, to utilize Formula One technologies and create additional revenue streams, but also connect their other invested technology businesses to provide the kind of differentiated technology services to other industries. And our starting point has been really applying digital twins, modeling simulation, as we called in the past,
Yeah.
digital twins supported by data analytics and machine learning kind of techniques, as well as trying to find out solutions to difficult problems that applying advanced technologies. We, as Williams Grand Prix Technologies, we are based in Grove on the same site, having a new start. It has been about a year. They predominantly serve defense, utility sectors at the moment, and have dealings in classic motorsports, racing, and automotive. But as you know, there's a slowdown in specifically automotive side of the businesses. And yeah, as you would expect, we do some aerodynamically efficient, structurally sound systems for sectors. Something that we are quite on publicly out there is how we are trying to implement so-called physics-informed machine learning into predictive asset health management, especially in water utility sector.
Okay.
Effectively, we are trying to build physical models of the systems, inject neural networks, data trained neural networks, and try estimate problems or potential failures on so-called assets.
Okay.
In example, in a most basic term, with our electric machines background, if you detect temperatures going higher than you would expect, you start inferring there must be something wrong here, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, but doing this in a bit more physics-based modeling and injecting some neural networks into that, and hopefully we can detect failures much earlier, so apply maintenance. So before things starts breaking down, we right on time, we start maintaining them and provide better services. We've been running some feasibility studies, especially in water sector,
Yeah.
with our partners. It is on public domain. We are progressing with that, and we intend to apply that across wide variety of sectors. I don't know if that's because of my background or because of the opportunities we found out, but recently we started developing a specific dedicated battery product. I must admit, I have to keep a degree of secrecy on this for the
Okay.
time being. We will protect the sectors and application at the moment.
Yeah.
Hopefully, in the next 6 months or so, we'll be more public about that.
Okay. Interesting. Not surprising, given your passions and experience in that world. But yeah, be interesting to find out more about that when you can. So in essence, with the business, are you're sort of taking the sort of analytics and data science capability that Williams would have developed for the F1 environment and applying it to new problems in other industries?
Yeah, so I summarized the specific focus areas we have. But if you imagine designing, developing, manufacturing, racing a racing car, you can actually break that into smaller blocks of technologies or engineering challenges. An example, uh, you're trying to come up with aerodynamically efficient but mechanically sound structures, coming up with lightest possible weight,
Mm-hmm.
lightweight materials, and then you're introducing control systems into them. You're integrating various systems like engines, gearboxes, hybrids, power units, suspension systems. And then you got data, telemetry coming out from the car, the data, and decisions are being made either through processing all data or through engineers looking into the data. And then throughout this process, we do test and validation or validate the or try coming up with advanced manufacturing techniques to produce parts faster. So actually, you can take uh, multiple steps of all this design, development, manufacturing, racing over racing car, and break them into smaller chunks and apply them in various sectors. As we all know, Formula One cars are almost like reverse flying on the wheels
Yeah.
planes, right? So on planes we got lift force. On race cars we try creating downforce so that we can go around corners fast.
Yeah.
So actually, my background is not aerodynamics, but at this one first principle basis, you can take the effort and technology being applied, making a Formula One car aerodynamically efficient, but delivering enough downforce and applied it into aerospace sector. Or every weekend the team goes for racing. There are some it is a high stakes environment. Some critical decisions are made based on the data and known factors. And the same kind of approach can be applied in defense sector in battlefield simulation to actually going through that process.
Yeah.
And funny enough, that I mentioned to you about how we use predictive asset health management in water utility sector, but our starting point for that was actually applying the same technique to estimate the Formula One car speed without using optical sensor.
Okay.
So effectively, we've got steering wheel, we've got longitudinal lateral acceleration, we've got wheel speeds, but under some conditions, as you know, wheels may be spinning, car may be hit into a curb, become airborne. We are always trying to estimate the actual speed of the car.
Yeah.
And we found out we got observers that we had implement, as you know, and they've got errors in it. And applying this technique, we found out that we can minimize those errors and estimate car speed much smoother with the specific scientific machine learning as patented by our partner, Julia Hub, and looked into how, and together working with another partner of ours, Binny's, a water utility sector specialist consultancy business. We came as a kind of three-way party.
Yeah.
And trying to implement the same technique in a different industry. So And you can really multiply these examples and find parallels between industries that you can take from motor racing and implement them into other sectors.
Yeah, interesting. It doesn't, and I guess, arguably, Williams has got a successful track record of doing that with sort of physical hardware through the WAE business, and now with the more sort of data digitalized service through Grand Prix Technologies. So yeah, really interesting. One thing I was wondering as you were talking, you went from this sort of very large, complex organization with a huge team across lots of countries and things, and we talked about the challenges and opportunity there. You've jumped back into effectively a startup business, so with a big brother to kind of put their arm over you maybe at times. Doesn't always quite work like that. How has that been, kind of going back into the startup world?
Yeah, I think in my last 3 years in CNH, I was vice president of technology and innovation at a large engineering group, but ultimately at CNH that there are product groups, and I had innovation teams dedicated to each product group. And in this large organization, still I was working with predominantly that team. Coming back to Williams, almost setting up a brand new organization from scratch. It is something that somehow I am used to. As the reason is that even at the early stages of my career, because there were not so many uh, professionals who were working on electrification. Regardless of where I was at my career journey, I had to keep setting up brand new engineering team or develop that business unit, right? So at the beginning of Williams Advanced Engineering, we didn't know we'll be a specialist business on batteries or electric vehicles. I think with the leadership team, we found that opportunity with the right skills being in the business, and we gained the traction. So I think this is for me going around the circle, doing something that I have done before, doing one more time, coming from a different angle. So
the thing you've done before though is so almost I'm laughing because in what I'm sort of thinking, your special skill here is you're doing again the thing that you've done before, which is doing something that no one's done before. So being
interesting. So yeah, I find this very exciting. We are a startup as part of a larger group. I got already quite strong beginning thanks to initiating group of the business, and along the way I managed bringing in few good talent into the business, and indeed one of our head of engineering, head of systems integration, Jake, is we developed the first generation Formula E racing car as three parties, right? So Williams was supplying the battery pack, McLaren was supplying the powertrain, and Spark Racing Technologies were bringing everything together. So Jake joined us recently. Jake was my peer at McLaren during those years. So together with Jake and Spark Racing, we were traveling around Europe, developing that racing car. So we are, I think along the way I found quite good young talent coming into the business, and progressing really. It's a good journey. It's exciting for me.
I'm going to ask so about sort of on the people side of things again. One of the things with the motorsport business, much like yourself, people, want to be part of a motorsport business because it's a dream from a young age, and they see Formula One or sport, Le Mans racing or something, and they love it. They want to be part of it. How do you find, or is it a strength for you, or does it work against you that you're sort of attached to a motorsport business, but you're not involved directly with the motorsport side of things? Or does your team get enough exposure to the motorsport side of things that they you kind of get to keep them interested in that way.
Yeah, I think all I can tell you is that when we started formal consultants business, we more or less did not have motorsports. Yeah, we had, I must admit, no, I cannot. But ultimately, we were running a racing team. So run the consultancy arm of the business doesn't mean that we'll stay forever out of racing. So
Right.
we may turn out to be racing at some point in time. So um, I describe people in our group. We all really love motorsports racing.
Mm.
So, but at the same time, we do not want to keep repeating the same thing.
Okay.
Motor racing really requires dedication, technical specialism, and you start repeating yourself a lot at that level. Uh, and people like myself, we do not want to be in that position, but there are other people who loves doing that, right? So it is really what how you would like to progress in your career. I quite like working on a racing car and then working on something else and then going back into another racing car.
Yeah.
If I'm not working on a racing car, having people working on racing cars around me is still great. Getting together with them, celebrating their achievements with them, being able to walk in a historic uh, Williams Museum in Grove, witnessing the history of Formula One racing,
Yeah.
um, is quite exciting. I must admit, it's quite special. So, um, yeah, I mean, to cut it short, it is it is personal preferences. It doesn't mean that. I don't think it is disadvantage or advantage. This is the way we prefer doing
Yeah.
things.
I think that, yeah, it's a good answer. It's not uncommon either. Like particularly these days, in most motorsports, there's not a huge scope for people to do things like it's very specialized. Like at a personal level for an individual engineer, there's often not scope to do anything other than the one thing they're very specialized in, and it's not uncommon then for teams to provide them with something else that they could do, or for people to want to do something a little bit different. Ultimately, I was reading about Adrian Newey recently, and one of his sort of big things was getting involved in America's Cup racing because he was kind of wanting to do something a bit different to motorsport that but still involved his skill set and things. So same, even the grand man himself kind of needed some relief doing something a little bit different. You see it. So you touched on it just a minute ago, and you obviously your background is all in electric vehicles and battery systems, and you got a lot of experience in that space. Right now, there's challenges in the automotive industry in general because of lots of sort of things, macroeconomic conditions and trade tariffs and all sorts of stuff. We're seeing a lot of negative press around electric vehicles and that kind of thing. What do you think about that? From what you see, is it like genuinely are OEMs retreating, or is it just kind of a convenient headline to explain why sales aren't quite there today?
Yeah, I think a few things. First of all, I think overall sector is struggling. It is not only about EVs. If you look into the details, I must admit um, every now and then check those UK car sales in examples, registered vehicles. I believe end of 2020, 2024, new registered vehicles, 20% of it was EV already. So 20% of total sold vehicles were EV, and last year, I believe this year it is closer to 25%. So first, there's or an uptick.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we are going through macroeconomic conditions. We are going through not that easy times, actually, under quite inflation pressures. Households are probably trying to save more than spend.
Yeah.
I think there are other drivers of it. But I would like to mention one thing that I'm lucky enough to be living in uh, two two different settings in the UK. So one is an apartment in London, one is a countryside home. And when I drive my EV in London, uh, my charging option is using the lampposts or publicly available charging stations. When
Yeah.
I'm back at my home in countryside, I've got my home charger, and the cost basis is so wide. One is economically exciting.
Yeah.
You pay about 7p per kilowatt hour, very low cost. But when you're charging in public space, you're spending 54p. Especially if you imagine EVs are really so good for city settings, we need to find a way of really um, achieving similar kind of pricing in public charging spaces. Otherwise, we will be, as the uh, people who like electric vehicles, will be pushing customers out of that domain. If their perception becomes driving an EV is expensive as driving a petrol car, I think that's a losing game. Um, in every technological revolution, two things needs to get together. One of them is technological readiness. So technologically, you should provide better, equal or better solution, and then
Yeah.
commercial readiness, and its price should be uh, equal or much cheaper. So if both does not meet, then if both do not meet, it turns into a difficult sale process. So uh,
Yeah.
EVs are for me great. I have these conversations quite a lot. An electric vehicle or the electric propulsion is ultimately superior to an internal combustion engine propulsion. I think the challenge here is that energy storage,
Yeah.
right? So because an engine, you need a clutch, you need a gearbox. All you're trying to do is imitating a natural torque speed curve on an electric machine by a clutch and a gearbox setup. But ultimately, energy storage is the challenge, and then recharging is the challenge. So those are the areas we need to put a little bit more focus. All I thought within the last few years, I think we put so much effort in making cars better, we forgot or did not take enough actions around charging infrastructure.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's a very good point. Because actually, what as a kind of gearhead, sort of car enthusiast, I mean, electric vehicles have sort of normalized, you know, 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 4 seconds is like normal now, you know, because of electric vehicles. So even a slow electric vehicle is not slow, you know. I mean, certainly like 0 to 30 in even a like basic Renault Zoe or something is still quite entertaining as of a drive, and you know, good. The car bit of it is good. Like it's hard to beat, but yeah, charging, battery capacity, maybe I don't know, battery capacity. Like there's a lot of EVs now that you don't really think about the range and so on. Charging. I was reading yesterday. Actually, it was a sort of complaint from some charge point operators about the cost of the electrical grid connection for the charging parks, and it basically is killing their business model because they're now paying a really high standing charge just to have the grid capacity. So there's a lot of things that like non-direct economic contributors to the cost of like charging infrastructure and so on, which is it's difficult. But with it, if you have a driveway, so you can charge at home. 7 pence overnight charging. You're laughing, but it is a little bit painful plugging into a public charger.
And don't get me wrong. Ultimately, I fell in love with cars, racing cars. That I still drive combustion engine cars. That I love them. But at the same time, we are as being a member of the technology developing community. I'm working in technology space to provide a future for the younger generations, not keep entertaining myself, right? So I truly believe future of transport is full electric. First of all, When I talk to younger generations, they are not like us. They're not interested in the engine noise. They see it as a kind of annoyance rather than people like us enjoying that, right? There will be a generational shift. Technology will be there, and then many generations later, probably combustion engines will be forgotten. So we'll find.
An interesting amusement, maybe. No, interesting stuff. So then, looking forwards, actually, in that way, and I think from what you said, I can probably guess a little bit of your answer here. But what are you most excited about coming up for you personally, for the business in the next few years? What are you hoping to do?
Yeah, I don't want to fall into the same answer category, but when I was starting my professional journey 25 years ago, electrification was so exciting for me because I was at the forefront of a new technology revolution. I feel like the current state of these years are providing a similar kind of opportunity in AI machine learning space. So I'm really excited about it. I'm learning every day about that more. Obviously, we've got applications in that field. It is generative AI side, using large language models, applying agentic AI, and improving your productivity, improving my productivity much more than how I could have done things a few years ago, to going ahead and applying the machine learning methods to increase speed of engineering is quite exciting for me. And both from my business's perspective, we are pushing that direction. On my personal level, I'm taking a lot of actions, try to learn and implement my day-to-day do my day-to-day activities as well. So I'm very, very excited about the opportunities various forms of AI brings into our lives. So I know that there are quite a lot of conversations around how much it's going to disrupt the labor and so on, but I think I gave this example about 25 years ago when I was starting my engineering journey. Probably I was one of the early engineers who adopted modeling and simulation into the engineering process myself. That was all about being able to engineer solutions faster and being able to test different solutions faster, developing control systems rather than waiting for building prototypes, being able to tune and calibrate control systems in digital domain those were my superpowers. I think we are now going into another time frame that now the same young engineers will be utilizing AI to have similar kind of superpowers, be able to do much more as a single engineer. I'm hoping that it's going to drive innovation and progression much more rather than taking away jobs. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm very excited about that. But I'll find out if I am. I have fallen into the hype myself, or if there is reality behind it.
That's very good. I think time will tell, but it certainly feels at the moment when you look at I think it's about accessibility, and I guess part of the job you're doing at the moment is providing a service to make those tools accessible. But the more accessible they become, and the more people sort of understand how to use them, it's just transformational. And like I say, it's not a replacement thing. It's making it people so much more productive, and giving them the ability to do a lot more than they could do without it. So very much augmentation. Really exciting time at the moment on that front. So very mindful of the time here that we have gone over time, but it's been a really, really great to talk to you and catch up, because it has been a while since we last spoke. So thank you very much for taking the time out to join me. And I really look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Same, Ryan. Thank you very much for your time today, and I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you.